Right at it. Right at it. Oh, he's done it again. Just as he did at the John Deere for his first win.
Welcome to episode 104 of the Go Get That podcast. Pleased to be joined again by Andy Lack, big in the golf betting community, big in the golf community period on X, no longer Twitter. Second time here, Andy. We're really happy to have you, and we're just going to talk some Jordan Spieth tonight.
Thanks, guys. It's a pleasure to be joined by you. I'm a massive Spieth fan. I think he's had one of the most fascinating career arcs, not just of the last 10 years, but in golf history. So excited to dive in with you guys.
Yeah, well, you wrote a very, very good article about 2 weeks ago. I don't know exactly what date you released it, but I immediately reached out and was like, would you like to come talk about it? Because it is a very fascinating topic to look into. We touch on it almost every episode. It comes up in some way about how the Jordan Spieth of old, very little signs are being showed right now. So we're glad you could join us. It should be really fun discussing this because you are right. It's very fascinating. He was completely on top of the golf world at such a young age, and now he's looking like not that. So,
yeah. I mean, here's the first thing that I think people need to understand about Jordan Spieth. I think people completely misremember how good he was at his peak. From 2015 to 2017, he was one of probably the most well-rounded player on the planet, right? This was not a guy that was getting it done completely with his putter. This was not a guy that was getting it done just completely with his irons. He was probably the best iron player in the world, but he was also one of the best. He was one of the better drivers of the ball in the world. He was hovering around that 0.4 per round off the tee, around the plus 0.3 threshold for strokes gained around the green, and the iron play was a little bit better and the putting was a little bit better. So we have this interesting situation career arc where he is not those things anymore, right? In fact, the only aspect of his game that statistically is similar from what it was from 2015 to 2017 is his short game. His short game has remained virtually unchanged. He still has one of the top 20 short games in the world, but he's seen almost like an equal decrease in all three other strokes gain categories, which is interesting because I think people think maybe he lost it with the irons, or he completely lost his driver, or his putter fell off a cliff. And that's not really an accurate telling of the story. It's been kind of an equal fall off in all three of the other major categories of his game. And I've kind of looked into, so I've got a ton of stats in front of me. I don't know how deep you want to get, but I've kind of looked into like why that happened. And there are a lot of different, really interesting reasons.
No, yeah, I think we definitely should dive into stats. In fact, the thing that sticks out, I'm looking at your article right now. The thing that sticks out to me the most, and I just mentioned this before you even got here, was the shots gained putting. And I think obviously the 2018 to 2023 is a much bigger zone of data collection. But I mean, you look at he had a decent year in 2021, but I mean that I'm interested to see what that number would be without 2019. Because when I think 2019 Jordan Spieth, I think could not do anything but drop in 50 footers for par. So I wonder if there's a way to find that. I don't know if you have that stat in front of you, because I would assume that number would probably be a little bit lower.
2019 Spieth was the best putter on the planet.
Yeah.
I mean, that was nuts. I mean, okay, not to hijack your guys' podcast, but I'm going to flip it on you guys, and we can maybe go around the horn on this one. You guys, I stare at numbers. I still watch a tremendous amount of golf, but I stare at numbers all day, right? You guys watch way more Jordan Spieth than I do. When you guys watch Jordan Spieth, how would you characterize what the most frustrating aspect of his game is right now?
Almost every round right now. I mean, he's been known to be a guy who steals shots in places where no other golfer would be able to, right? But when I'm thinking right now in his career, he's consistently losing. He's consistently scoring 2 to 3 shots worse than he should be. I mean, you look at me, Jordan and I talked on the last podcast, recapping the Hero, about how he played the third hole, probably 6 shots worse than he should have in the last 3 days.
Yeah.
So he's just, it's not even big mistakes all the time, but it's just bad scoring, really bad scoring. Even when he's hitting the ball well, he's scoring worse than he should be. He never scores to his utmost potential, I don't feel like, anymore. So watching him, that's what sticks out to me.
I
Yeah.
think kind of
ahead.
long term and just kind of following along, obviously Bob and Jordan track pretty much every shot. It seems like he's just playing whack-a-mole with this game. Like there'll be
Yeah.
stretches where the driver is fantastic and he'll lead the field for a round off the tee. And then the next day he'll be like, I think at the Hero, there was a day he led the field off the tee, hit every fairway.
He led almost the field at the PGA Championship off
Yeah.
the tee.
Oh, exactly.
I'm a junior member at Oak Hill. That makes no sense to me. I play that course a dozen times every summer. I mean, to be one of the leaders in strokes gained off the tee at Oak Hill, he had to be hitting it so long and so straight. And so you're right. There's these flashes of brilliance. Sorry to cut you off.
Well, no,
He had a
it's
wrist injury coming in too.
Yeah,
Don't forget that.
right. It's like you're not expecting that at all. And to your point at Oak Hill, guys like Bryson, Hovland, and Koepka were in contention and playing well. And Spieth
Yeah.
still was better than them off the tee.
Yeah.
He was what, T29 or something,
Something like that,
irrelevant,
yeah.
basically. And so I think the numbers that you bring up in your article and kind of throughout, you can see, or just watching a lot of them play, it's like, oh, it was really good for 3 weeks and then it disappears.
Well, I mean, how about just last week?
Right.
I mean, or 2 weeks ago, he went 13 for 13 in round 2? And then cost himself like 4 or 5 penalty shots off the tee the next 3 days. I mean, the next 2 days. I mean, it's not even a week to week thing. It's a day to day thing.
Well, and it's also like the areas of the game too. Like
Yeah.
the putter will be good for 3 weeks, and then it won't do anything for a month. And then at that point, all the averages just come down because it was good for 3 weeks, and then it wasn't even in the bag for the next month. And same with the iron play, same with the wedges. And it kind of feels like broader scale. It touches on the fact that he still doesn't know where his swing is, and he's thinking about it all the time, and he's always adjusting and he's always fidgeting, and that changes a lot very quickly in this game. So
Yeah, his swing changes a lot.
It does. And so Dan and I are both econ majors, so we kind of love the numbers aspect of golf as well. And I'm sure you've seen the numbers, Andy. The thing that, really pisses me off with Jordan, and you go on his Rick Run Good account or his Data Golf account, and you look at those major championships and you see the strokes gained data. How many of the majors, of the last 20 majors, has he lost strokes gained putting in, and how many has he gained ball striking? I think probably if you take the last 20 majors or so, he's probably gained strokes putting maybe 5 times or something like that. You could probably give me the real number there.
Yeah.
He just, when it comes to major championship golf, he makes nothing. And those are the 4 biggest events every year. And he usually ball strikes it pretty good, or at least half decent enough to, get yourself in the picture. But then he just makes nothing, and you can't win a major not making any putts.
Yeah. It almost feels like he's so concerned. Like, we know that Jordan's one of those guys who lives for the major championships, right? Like, those are the ones he wants to win. He's got, to a lesser extent, that like Brooks Koepka mentality. Like, he loves the majors, and it's almost like he works so hard to get a swing that he struggles with in between majors, to a point that he gets there, the swing's ready, and he's put no work in on the greens. It almost feels like that, because he's thrown away multiple major championship contentions in the last 5 years because of his putters only. So,
yeah, I pulled it up while you guys were talking. He's lost strokes putting in 14 out of his last 20. So yeah, you're right. I mean, he's hovering in that 70% of the majors that he's played in over the last 5 years. He's lost strokes putting, and I didn't realize this, he's actually driven the ball pretty well at majors. recently. But I think if you guys want to take this in a major direction, because I think he's a good enough player that at this point his career is going to be measured in majors, right? Like I would say, how many more times does Spieth have I can give you guys I'm a bit of a golf history nerd, so I could walk through like what he would have to do to raise up the ranks and become like a top 15, top 20 golfer of all time. But I can tell you one thing, it's not winning the Heritage once a year or even winning 2 or 3 regular PGA Tour events. It's contending and competing in majors. And I think the problem with Spieth a little bit is that, and this is like partially a fallacy, but there is some truth to it. Oak Hill is like the counter example, right? Oak Hill is kind of the exception to the rule. But because of the way that the USGA and PGA Championship are trending in terms of their setups, you're not getting as many Chambers Bay setups that Jordan Spieth was a little bit a better fit for going forward. You kind of have, and I'll never forget watching, this was during one of his really poor spells, but him at Winged Foot and the frustration. There's just the frustration of beating balls on the range in the dark and being like, okay, if I'm not driving the ball 315 yards in the air, then I don't have a shot at this place, right? And I'm sure you guys remember 2019 at Bethpage, that PGA as well, which is like one of the most miraculous performances of all time. Like, I have no idea how he finished. He gained 10 strokes putting that week, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is that a lot of these setups for the PGA and US Open are and we could talk about Pinehurst because I just dove pretty deep into Pinehurst recently.
Yeah.
That's one of the one places.
Are you going?
It's actually a good. I am probably, yeah.
I'm going as well. Yeah.
Okay, great. We'll meet up there. I went in 2014.
Absolutely.
I went to college in the area, so I went when I was in college.
Where'd you go?
Duke.
Well.
So I
that doesn't surprise me.
I went in 2014.
Yeah.
So it's been a while, but anyway, point being, like, it kind of seems like a lot of years he's boxed himself out of some of these PGA and US Open setups. Like,
yeah,
I don't think he's a great fit at Valhalla, right? I don't think he's a great fit if they ever keep going back to places like Torrey Pines and Quail Hollow and Winged
definitely not a good
and,
fit for Torrey Pines
and Oakmont and all those tracks like that. So he really is in this position where it feels like to win more majors, he needs to capitalize and peak every year at the Open and the Masters.
Yeah. No, I agree
he's
with
aiming
that.
for Nick Faldo's career, I think, would be a pretty good goal, I'd say, Andy. I think we joke he probably should already be there with, all the close chances he's had. But I think if you're looking at a golfer in the majors they've won, Faldo's probably his, most likely / most possible, guy to chase after.
No, yeah, for sure.
Do you want the full nerd breakdown real quick?
Please.
So if Spieth dropped dead tomorrow and never played another competitive round of golf, he would still be, give or take, the 35th most accomplished golfer ever.
He'd be a Hall of Famer. Yeah.
Correct. He's had 11 prime years, 13 wins, 3 majors, 4 major runner-ups, 14 major top 10s. Like, he's already had a more accomplished career than guys like Ben Crenshaw, Jose Maria Olazabal, Payne Stewart, Johnny Miller, right? So he's just 30, right? He's just turning 30. So he's already before the age of 30 in one of the 35 best golfers of all time. But you take somebody like Nick Faldo, who I have at 13 ever, the 13th most accomplished golfer of all time, 33 worldwide wins, 6 majors, 3 runner-ups, 26 major top 10s. So you're basically saying for Spieth to become a top 15 golfer of all time, and when I'm talking top 15, I'm talking Tiger, Jack, Hogan, Player, Snead, Hagen, Palmer, Saracen, Watson, Mickelson, Nelson, Ballesteros, Faldo, Trevino. Like, we're talking, these are I have Rory right now at 17, right? So we're talking, these guys are the best of the best. He would need to win 20 more times and 3 more majors. Now, you think, does Spieth have what, 10 to 12 years of highly competitive golf left? And
Is he
maybe
even-
he can sneak out a couple magic runs in his late 40s. But you're basically saying, do you think over the next 10 to 12 years, Spieth can win 20 to 25 times and 3 more majors?
I think
So
the
he has
3
to
majors
average,
part is much more
yeah,
likely.
he has to average 2 wins I mean, it, like, when you say it, it doesn't sound absurd. Like, in the next 12 years, can Spieth win twice a year and 3 more majors? It's the major part that I think is the hard one.
Really? That's interesting.
I think it's the exact opposite, Andy, to be
Yeah.
honest. I just don't think
Interesting.
I think he'd need 2 Scotty Scheffler years to be able to hit that. What is it? How many more normal wins does he need?
20.
20, he wins 20 or 25 more times and he's a top 15.
You look at how hard it is to win on the PGA Tour right now, even just in normal events. I think that's what makes it so hard. I think winning 1 time a year right now is, if he can win 1 time a year until he's 30, if he can average 1 win a year until he's 43 and gets a few majors in there, that I'm happy with that. I mean, with how hard it is to win on the PGA Tour right now, if he can win those 3 majors and also average 1 major, 1 other win, or if he can average 1 win a year for the next 13 years, I think that's a successful next 13 years for sure.
Yeah. I mean, we're also talking about a guy who's won twice in the past 6
7.
plus years now.
Yeah.
So like
6 times in 2015. You just need one more of those.
Yeah, exactly.
That's easy.
The thing that stuck out to me was so you look at Spieth right now, where the Rory thing really interested me. So you say you have Rory at 17 right now?
Yeah.
No, I'm not a Rory fan.
Where's DJ? Just by
I'm a massive Rory fan. DJ, but I'll forgive you. He's a controversial figure in the game. I've come to understand that these days. I have DJ at 30. By the way, if you want, the active players, Brooks is probably the hardest player to evaluate of all time because he has 5 majors, which is an incredibly exclusive club, but only 13 wins. So there's not another player in the top 30, 40 guys that have as few wins as Brooks, but there's also very few players that have as many majors. So he's really tough to evaluate. But
how many
active players? Rory 17, Brooks 19, DJ 30, Spieth 35. Rahm's already at 43, by the way.
Bro, it's gonna be tough for Rahm to move up any further, though, I'd assume.
Right. Well, that's
I just think for Rory, so if he drops dead today,
mm-hmm.
Do you really? How many worldwide wins does he have?
33.
And only 4 majors.
Put the bias away, Bob.
Put the bias away, Bob.
I think
33 wins, 4 majors. Here's the kicker: 3 runner-ups and 30 major top 10s. So one of the things I looked about is, as you guys know, golf is not just a sport of wins and losses, right? There are a couple guys like Angel Cabrera that has 2 majors and has done nothing else in his career. So you can't just look at wins. You have to look at how dominant a player was.
Mm-hmm.
And Rory has had his dominant years for sure. There's no doubt about that. And I'm
30 major top 10s is that's more than a lot of guys ahead of him.
That's probably the stat to me that has me a little more on your side. Those I didn't know that he had that many top 10s in majors. That makes a little more sense to me, because personally, I'm a big in individual sports. It's all about like the majors. Like that's sort of how I've always believed that. And no, it's not just all about wins, but I think it's how much weight do you put in the career Grand Slam?
A lot.
So I
think that's really tough. And you brought up a good point, because this majors versus wins thing is really tough, right? So there's no perfect answer to this. I can ask all 3 of you guys, but how many wins worldwide? And I take legitimate wins, right? I'm not talking about stuff like the Hero, maybe stuff on the Asian Tour. has to be DP World Tour, PGA Tour, even the DP World Tour one.
Okay.
I've done some vetting on.
The John Deere count.
John Deere counts. How many wins equates to a major? So I guess let me ask you a question. What's a more impressive career to you? 10 wins and 3 majors, or 20 wins and 2 majors?
20 wins and 2 majors would be my answer.
I think it's more impressive. Yeah.
10
I
to
think
20
it's about
wins is a
equal.
lot.
I kind of
Yeah.
have that as like
I
feel
think
like
it's pretty equal too.
Yeah.
I think that's very sort of comparative to DJ and Spieth.
Mm-hmm.
Because what, Spieth has 13.
DJ's got 29.
Yeah. Well, Spieth has
but 2 majors. So
yeah.
I am saying that DJ's 29 and 2 is more impressive than Spieth's 13 and 3, but it's close.
Yeah.
DJ also has 5 runner-ups.
Here's my
That's brutal.
That's major. I mean, Spieth has 4. Spieth has
That's
4
yeah,
major
yeah.
runner-ups too. Like Spieth could have won 3 Masters by now.
Yeah. The thing that I'm wondering is, so Spieth in the prime of his career had a lot of tough losses too, playing incredible golf. Like you look at the PGA in 2015, that it was like the best runner-up shots gained of all time, whatever, when he lost to Jason Day. The thing that I struggle to put context into worldwide wins is I feel like if Jordan Spieth played as much on the DP World Tour as Rory does in Spieth's 2015 and 2017 era, he would have quite a few more worldwide wins.
Fair, but Rory's PGA Tour stuff is doing most of the legwork. Like Rory.
Oh yeah, I know for sure. I just think that
he's got a couple ones that you can quibble with on the DP World Tour.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
I just think that the
Spieth has 2 John Deeres.
Yeah,
like and
but the John Deere is
picks off
PGA
Texas
Tour
events.
players.
Fair enough,
Like-
but I think the gap between, I think on any given week, it's just hard to win regardless of where you play.
Yeah.
So if you're
absolutely,
you're
and
gonna
I'll stand by
nitpick-
this, Andy. I think that winning a full field Pebble Beach, even when it's just like Johnson and Spieth as the only 2 big names, is harder than winning a limited field event right now on the PGA Tour, purely because I just think there's always that one guy who careers it. I don't think the winning score changes that much, whether it's a stacked field or a non-stacked field. I think that will be interesting to see that this year when all the big names come to Pebble and play this event.
I agree with you, by the way.
Yeah,
the data would agree with you too, that strength and numbers, right?
Yeah,
like
it doesn't.
Everybody's so good at this point.
Mhm.
There's such there's so much parity on the PGA Tour and such a wide dispersion of
For
players
sure.
that can shoot 63 every day.
Exactly.
So I agree with you. And that's why, I mean, the live conversation gets so difficult with all of this and just mucks up all of it.
Yeah, it's just
Because
tough.
Yeah, live.
How do you count live wins, right?
Live is
Like-
going to be very interesting in the future. And Andy, I'm really excited to see in 20 years how you're talking about like live if it continues on a path, because right now, obviously we look at it as delegitimate, right? But if if say the deal doesn't work or something, and John Rahm goes on to dominate live golf for 20 years, I think that there's definitely there's so much unknown as to, I feel like live golf will be more legitimized in 20 years if that happens than it is right now. Like right now, it's such a delegitimized league.
Mm-hmm.
I think that could change over time significantly.
Mm-hmm. So do you guys, I don't want to get too far deep into the live rabbit hole, but do you guys consume live at all or not really?
No.
No, I don't watch live really,
No.
unless I have like a bet on it.
Just being blunt, I mean, I have this talk with people on my Instagram page all the time. Besides the Ryder Cup and the President's Cup, I just do not care for team golf. It's just,
Yeah.
I agree with you.
I mean, like,
agree
as
with you.
as like massive Spieth fans, I mean, we enjoy the single competition when Spieth's trying to beat 100+ dudes in a field. And there's more when you win like that. There's way more excitement than if you were to win in a team aspect.
And I
Okay.
also think like I'm definitely of us three, I think the most I think you guys are definitely more anti-live than I am, I'd say for sure. I think that even as someone who will defend live in certain situations, I still think that it's not that entertaining golf. I don't think it's that entertaining to watch. But that doesn't mean the golf's not necessarily good. It just means it's not fun to watch.
So
I
I'll
agree.
ask you guys this question. If you were a golf history nerd like me and cared about record keeping, and one of the ways that I look at who's the greatest golfer of all time, because I'm actually writing about this for the website. I'll put this out on Wednesday or Thursday, but I'm writing about what John Rahm needs to do to catch Seve and the pace that John Rahm is currently on. And one of the big things that I look at is wins and major performance, right? Worldwide wins and major performance. And the struggle I have is, and part of the deep dive I'm doing is like strength of field. It's complicated. It gets really messy, like strength of field on the DP World Tour in the 80s versus strength of field right now on
Yeah.
live.
How do you
Like that's the thing is it's like, does a live win? If I'm going to give credit to, if Kerry Middlecoff has to be on my pyramid because he dominated an era, right? But he's playing against firemen and plumbers. Do you have to count, if Rahm wins 3 times, those are wins. That's the struggle.
You said you had a full list, right? Of where you think the full. So how do you judge like someone like Harry Vardon?
So I am not, my cutoff line is, I believe, the PGA Championship. My cutoff line is when they started to do 4 majors, I believe, in 1915.
So no
Right?
dinosaurs.
So
No dinosaurs.
I cut everything off before, I believe, around the World War II plus era, which is where a lot of 1920s, 1930s is where things really start, which is what a lot of sports do, right? Is there's pre-World War II and post-World War II. So how do I'm operating post-World War II. Like Bobby Jones, maybe the most talented golfer ever, right? Top 5. He'd never turned pro. Like, I don't know how to evaluate that. He never turned pro. So he's not on there, for example.
How do you judge like the 70s and the 80s versus like, how do you look at the
I didn't know
Tiger
this was
versus
the
Jack today?
direction we're going to go down, but I'm delighted.
I'm just interested.
Yeah, no, we could talk about anything. Tell me if you want to get there. I have more questions on Spieth for you guys.
Is the list on the website?
Is
the list on?
No, it's private, but I'm happy to email it to you guys.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Please do. I'd really love to know how you like dive into Jack versus Tiger and like the different eras that they played in.
Short answer: Jack more accomplished, Tiger more dominant.
That's what I have to. That's what I think too.
But there's no right answer in terms of comparing strength of field. I do the best that I can with the data that I have. So largely, this data revolution in golf happened around 2006-ish, right? 2003 to 2006-ish was when we really started getting strokes gained more. So there's no way to measure strength of field in the 70s and 80s. The best you can do is anecdotal research and evidence of who these guys were playing. So it's tricky. I will say this is undeniably the most difficult era. And this is people that talk about the lack of great players when Tiger was at his peak. There's some truth to that, right? Because the way that strokes gain work, like Tiger's going to make a lot of guys look bad by how dominant he was. But you're right. You hit on it. The PGA Tour is deeper than it ever has been. It's harder to win an event like the John Deere than it ever has been. This is something I talked about. I have a long podcast coming out tomorrow on the rollback with Lou Stagner. And we talk about like how junior golf has changed so much and how athletes have been infused into this sport in the last 20 years. And now how, the guys like Ludwig and Gordon Sargent and Minwoo Lee, those guys are 5'10" on a good day, and they can carry the ball 350 yards. And for a guy like Jordan Spieth, who just had his second child and is now on the wrong stage of 30, it's like, God, I got to deal with this Gordon Sargent kid who carries it 340 now.
Just
Like
putt better.
that's the scary thing going forward.
I was gonna say I think I've mentioned it on our podcast, and I think about it all the time. I don't know if you'd agree with this statement, but I truly think like the distance as guys have gotten longer, it's made the depths of fields even greater. Because I think if you hit it far, I just think there's a lot of guys on tour that hit it far that, weren't around even in 2015. Like I think the strength of field nowadays, and it's tough for Jordan. I think when you look at the leaderboards in 15, some of those names aren't, as good as, today. I don't think today's era has a lot of great players, but there's a lot of really good players, which make it tricky to win on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it also depends on setup too, right? And that's kind of goes back into what I was talking about with the US Open PGA Champion stuff is that, and this may be controversial. I am pro rollback. So I don't know how many feathers I'm ruffling there, but part of the problem is that the way that the PGA Tour is set up right now is very outside of a couple courses. And these are some of the courses that Spieth tends to play really well at outside of your heritages and colonials, right? It is incredibly advantageous. Like if I was building a junior golfer right now, if I was telling a junior golfer their easiest road math to be a PGA Tour player, I would tell them speed train and be a good wedge player, right? Because the PGA Tour in a lot of ways has been reduced to driving distance and wedge play, right? And Spieth kind of comes and goes in both of those. Like Spieth is not short. That's a misconception that people have.
No, we know that, yeah.
Of the elite players, he's not as long as your Rorys and Rahms and Ludvigs and Hovlands, but Spieth is above average in driving distance on the PGA Tour. It's just not an elite skill of his.
Yeah.
And you guys know better than anyone else. Like the wedge play comes and goes.
Yeah. Imagine Spieth just like walked off the course after shooting like a 73 on a Sunday and like, you know what? I'm taking the Matt Fitzpatrick route and just decided to speed train for a year and a half.
That'd be brutal.
Well, he's picked up so much distance the past
He has
3 years. Granted, he's probably just hit the center of the face a little bit more often. But somebody mentioned it on Twitter, like they want to see fat Spieth again, which I thought was hilarious. But like young Spieth was just kind of like he had a little like young sort of pudginess to him. And I think that kind of in my head tells me it's more maybe I didn't have the techniques or the experience or the ideas of how to train your body to play better golf. But I think that speaks more to like just being all feel. And now I think he works out a ton and you can see it. And people who work out are very sort of rigid in your movements, right? Because your technique has to be great. And I think that kind of translates into his swing a little bit. I know that was a bit of a change of topic there, but I was just thinking about that.
No, for sure.
As you mentioned, some of the like picking up ball speed, because I think his body's in better shape than it was. I think he's also just hitting the ball better. But with that, I think came a little bit of a loss of sort of feel. And part of that is also just the whole mental game that he's playing in his head 24/7 and the experience that's come with the shortcomings and the failures in some of golf's biggest moments.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you with the lack of field, and I say it all the time. I mentioned it with the strokes gained putting in the majors. Whenever I get asked, like, if there's one thing he could fix, I always, come back to the putter because, Andy, I mean, you know this, Rory, Rahm, Scheffler, Spieth will never, ever, ever be as good a ball striker as those dudes. But what he used to do best is he'd lap them on the greens, and he just doesn't do that anymore. He's an okay enough ball striker, obviously not as good as those dudes, but he should be lapping them on the greens like he used to, and he just doesn't do that anymore.
It's all just because it's a man versus man sport. It's not it's not team sport, right? You're by yourself, and there's so many more factors that play in because you just look at purely from an intimidation standpoint. No one on the PGA Tour right now stands next to Jordan Spieth in the final group on the first tee and is feeling the way that they'd feel with a Scotty or a Rahm sitting next to them. Like, not even close. He
You think
used
they'd be
to
more or less intimidated by Spieth?
even, like today,
Yeah.
way less.
Yeah.
Purely because I don't think Rahm plays with Spieth and watches him stand over a 10-footer and is scared of him making them over his head all day. Whereas
True.
every single time Rahm puts a wedge 10 feet, we're all thinking it's a birdie without even him putting it yet. Because it's not even making the 50-footers. It's which is where he did lap them, as you said, Jordan. He's not making the putts he needs to make to win. There are putts that Scotty Scheffler, even as the bad, not great putter that he is, makes when he's in contention. And that's why he wins. You just don't see Scotty Scheffler is by no means a great putter.
No, far from it.
But at the Hero, he made everything he needed to make, and he ran away with the win.
Mm-hmm.
Spieth doesn't have those weeks anymore. So
let me ask you guys this question, and this is going a little bit. I'm pivoting from the statistical stuff with Spieth and asking you, getting more into the realm of unquantifiable stuff. How do you guys feel about him joining the policy board in terms of how that would affect his on-course play? Because I was thinking about this the other day, because I'm a massive Rory fan, right? So he basically is taking Rory's seat on the policy board, right? And one school of thought is, oh, this is great for Rory, right? Like he's not going to have to deal with all that bullshit anymore. He's not going to have to, he's not going to have to be the mouthpiece of the crumbling PGA Tour. He's just going to get to focus on golf, do less interviews, stop answering all these questions and focus on the golf, right? But I mean, Rory, statistically, I know he didn't win majors, but Rory played some of the best golf of his entire career while in that position. So when you guys heard the news of Spieth joining the policy board, were you pessimistic or optimistic in terms of how that might translate to his on the course? Because, by the way, like, it's not just his first season as the PGA Tour policy board director. The entire future of the PGA Tour is completely in flux. That job right now is way harder than it ever has been in golf history. I mean, he's out there with Cantlay and the Rain Group negotiating the entire future of golf. Oh, and by the way, like, this is his first season ever as a father of two.
Yeah,
so
there's a lot going on in his life. Yeah.
Right.
I don't really think it affected me that much from a fan's perspective, purely because he's very different than Rory. He never gives his opinion on anything. True. He always keeps it to himself. He always says the most conservative possible thing he can to the media every time. He'll never give you an opinion that Rory would give you. He'll always keep it pretty much to himself, whether he's thinking about it or not, which probably is. I don't think it will be as big as it was for Rory, either good or bad, him leaving versus Spieth coming in. But I definitely think there's a lot more to focus on for him right now. And I think that started with the kids in general. Mm-hmm. So I don't really think I reacted positively or negatively to it, but I was sort of just like pretty neutral on it. But I don't know how Dan and Jordan feel about it.
Well, I think the initial reaction was, shoot, less time to practice. And given the way last season ended, it's like,
I have to fix pro golf. Darn it.
Right. Trying to fix the state of this game, and I can't fix the state of my own game. That was kind of the initial thought, but I don't know. I don't think it, like Bob said, he's so he gives good answers, but they're very benign and they don't stir people up ever. And I kind of think that doing that comes so naturally to him that I don't think he spends a lot of time picking the right words to say. I think he just does it. So I don't I'm sure he's probably tired, but I also don't think he would do it if he didn't like want to do it. So I don't know. I think he's
Well,
and he's a good fit for the kind of what they need right now, I think.
yeah, we talk about how Spieth is not as he doesn't get as much coverage as Rory purely because he doesn't speak his mind. But I think in the locker room, he's still a very big influence.
Totally
Uh,
agreed.
like within the walls of the clubhouse, he is very much listened to. Purely because of how big his name is in general. I mean, we talk about all the time how Spieth and Rory are really the two players that the PGA Tour can't afford to lose.
Somebody came out. I think it was Brandel who said Spieth would be a bigger loss, or Spieth moves the needle more than Rahm, and a bunch of aggregators were upset about that because obviously Rahm has been a better player than Spieth over the past couple
I
of
don't think
years.
it's really close.
That's crazy. Spieth is a way bigger star than
Spieth
Rahm.
gets offered.
Like it's not close.
Spieth gets offered probably close to 800 million if he was
Spieth's
to
a
join.
way bigger star than
So
Rahm.
yeah, Andy, we played the what would Liv offer Spieth if Rahm got 550. Like, what do you think that number is? We kind of settled on 800, but
yeah, listen, I can't say it's a ton higher than Rahm because my guess is that so much of Liv is the global aspect and them attempting to lead into the global aspect. So I think Liv could probably talk themselves into just getting Rahm is going to generate so much money for us when we go back to Valderrama again.
Yeah,
but it's not less. It's not.
I think it's more the aspect of this could be the punch that, like, I mean, if Rahm or if Rory or Spieth leaves, those are the two players that the PGA Tour can't really afford to lose.
Yeah, and there's something about Spieth that fits with the PGA Tour's brand, I guess is the way that I would phrase it, right?
For sure.
Like you have this guy that won on the PGA Tour at a really early age, right? Even his, that early win at the John Deere, some of his early wins at the Travelers are still iconic PGA Tour moments that they like to show on the telecast anytime you go back to TPC River Highlands and TPC Deer Run. Like Spieth has been the lifeblood of the PGA Tour in many ways post Tiger because he has won at all of these venues that a lot of these guys aren't going to return to anymore. He goes to Texas and plays Colonial and Valero. Like he does so much for the PGA Tour in terms of its marketing and its branding strategy and its dollars generated on some of the lesser weeks, still being able to cash checks off of those magical Spieth bunker shots from the mid 2000s. That I agree with you. I think that Spieth is way bigger of an asset to the PGA Tour, both from speaking from past experience and going forward than Jon Rahm, even if Jon Rahm continues to outplay Spieth for the next 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, he's plain and simple. He's the face of American golf. What I always come back to, like, he won the U.S. Open at the youngest age since Bob Jones. I'm sure you know that, Andy. So, I mean, like, to win the U.S. Open, the national open of our country, he's the biggest American name in golf. You got Rory, who's Northern Irish, and then you got Spieth, who's American. And, I mean, we talk about it all the time. I don't think there's anything golf needs more than a Rory Spieth showdown Sunday at Augusta. That's the two biggest names in golf right now besides Tiger. Tiger isn't going to be playing forever, so why not that?
Is there anything a guy like Scheffler could do to become sort of the face of American golf? Like, is it just go on a Tiger-esque run?
He's going to have to play amazing because I don't think he's charismatic enough. And that's not to say that Spieth was some magical, mind-blowing interview, but there was this boyish like quality to Spieth, this relatable everyman quality to Spieth, where you watched him play golf and it gave you hope, right? There was something magical and whimsical about it. And Scheffler is like the polar opposite of that. Right? Scheffler's robotic. He's mechanical. It's unattainable, right? I couldn't swing like Scheffler if I wanted to, let alone hit the ball straight, swinging like Scheffler, right? And Scheffler looks like he's 42 already. And,
Yeah.
and so much of Spieth's charm was it was this 23-year-old kid kicking everyone's ass, and he looked like he was 16. I watched a lot of footage from 2015 to 2017 when I was doing research for that article, and watching Jordan Spieth play golf was spellbinding, right? You couldn't take your eyes off him because you didn't know what he was going to do next, right? And Scheffler doesn't really bring that to golf. I mean, I'm in the top 99.999 percentile of people that watch golf. I'm sure you guys are too. There's nothing about Scheffler that I think is getting the casual fan. Like, think about a text you're sending to a casual fan. Hey, Spieth's making the turn at Augusta. He's 3 back. Right? Like, if you're sending that text about Scotty Scheffler, it just doesn't hold that. You're not, right? It doesn't hold that same type of rarefied air that Spieth holds in terms of kind of the majestic, whimsical nature of the way that he plays golf and puts butts in seats.
Yeah, I think it's kind of crazy too, because like I think the thing with Spieth, he Spiethed at such a young age. Scotty's already 27. If Scotty would have done what he's doing now like 5 years ago and he was 22 or 21, I think he'd be in that like, conversation of like the face of American golf. But I think Spieth did it at such a young age, and the golf world was looking for like another American superstar at such a young age, and Spieth provided that.
Yeah, I mean, this was also in a time where, like, in 2014, 2015, Tiger Woods wasn't like the Tiger Woods that everyone had been watching for 10 years. So they were looking for a new guy. Right? Yeah, he was hurt. He had all the things going on. He was in rehab for the past 5 years, but people were looking for a new guy to kind of just like, get hooked on.
Yeah,
like a new drug.
He made from 2014. He didn't play at all in 2016. Tiger played 23 times in a 4-year stretch between 2014 and 2017.
Yeah, they were looking for a guy, but you can't just look for a guy who's good. He's got to be entertaining, right? And
that's what Tiger was.
What?
Spieth was more than a guy, though. It's not like they were just looking for a guy. Spieth was doing things that haven't been done since Tiger.
Has anyone ever came at you with that angle before, guys? Has anyone ever hit you with the Spieth? Did Spieth simply market correct a Tiger injury? Like, does the Spieth thing never happen if Tiger's healthy?
Spieth doesn't have many haters.
No,
you're right. He doesn't have haters because he keeps his mouth shut.
Yeah, he doesn't say anything. He doesn't say anything controversial.
Yeah.
Somebody brought up on Twitter that like when Tiger started to struggle, Spieth was like in full bloom, and then Tiger came back around 2018, and then obviously won the Masters in 2019, and then Spieth like fell off a cliff. And then again, Tiger kind of the same thing. And then Spieth sort of restored. And it's like, how does that kind of work? It's
here's my opinion on just in general. That's a good point, Dan. My opinion on in general of what Spieth's career, just the reality of where he is right now, is 2021. That should be a year that greats should have on average. Like, he won once. It was not a huge event. He played better than winning just once, sure. The numbers say that. But that was a good, approaching great year. But that should not have been what we looked at it as heaven, because we hadn't seen anything close to it in 5 years.
2021 was his best year since 2017.
Yeah.
That was the year he came runner-up at St. George's, right?
runner-up at St. George's.
7 top
he had that.
fives.
He had like the 8 at the Masters, right? So he played really well.
That's his best year since
Yeah,
2017.
no, it was great year.
Awesome.
He shot the 61 at Scottsdale. It was just such a hype, fun year, and he should have won more than just once for sure.
Putted half decent that year.
Yeah, he looked more like his old self, but that should not be the peak every 3 years. So,
well, that might beg the bigger question of well, who is he really? You know?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm touching on.
We have a lot more evidence at the professional level. I don't want to say the amateur. I guess if you look at his whole career, when first time he ever picked up a club when he was 4 or whatever it was, every sign pointed to, yeah, this guy's gonna be awesome, right? Won 2 USAMs.
Everyone's ass at the amateur level. The stories coming up in Texas, Scotty Scheffler, Zalatoris, all those guys worship Spieth.
Yeah. And so
Spieth
now
was better junior golfers than all of them. They all worshiped him. He taught all of them. They were all under his tutelage in Dallas.
Yeah. And it's crazy to think that at the pro level, we have a larger sample of him being an above average player, but not that dude that just kicked everybody's ass for right. There's now 6 years saying that he's top 25 player in the world, top 20 player, if you include, those bad years. And then there's a 4-year sample of guy's a top 5 player in the world. And it's interesting that that's kind of where we are. It just always circles back to man, it's crazy. If you told yourself in 2017 after the Open that Spieth has 2 wins and we're approaching 2024, 2 wins since then, it's just,
I mean, for sure. It's disappointing, but I remember you writing in your article something about how the era is essentially, the Spieth we once knew is essentially gone. What he did in 2015, unless you're Tiger, was never sustainable. First of all, never sustainable. Putting, the iron play, it was never going to be that. But 2016 was a fine year. That was not
17 sustainable.
Yeah. No one is saying he needs to have 3 more 2015 years. It's not reality.
Right.
But the fact that we're going on 8 years now, if he doesn't win this year with 2 wins, is absurd. So
let me ask you guys this, because I gotta get out of here in a second. So let's end with some predictions.
We do as well. I have the Dolphins game to watch. So
okay, so let's do big. I'm gonna ask you. So we'll do rapid fire on this. I'm gonna ask you big picture his career, and then we'll do quick predictions for the following season. If I told you guys Spieth's career, 10 more wins, 1 major, are you guys signing for that? Or are you saying, if somebody hands you that,
what's the major?
It says as a
what's the major?
major of your choice.
Then I'm taking it.
It could be another. Okay, but that means that's what you're getting.
That's fine.
Give me
if
Frisco.
I get the PGA,
Give me Frisco,
yeah. If he's got the PGA, then he has.
So what major would you choose? You guys would choose
the PGA.
The PGA to get the Grand Slam.
That instantly makes him, I believe.
Yeah, it's
a top.
Yeah.
Probably.
So I'll just say this is not even including the Grand Slam, right? And the Grand Slam elevates him into a category that 6 or 7 other guys have done. But say he wins 10 more times in another major, now he's in the 24 zone.
Yeah,
with,
I don't think I take
Raymond
that. I take my gamble that he can get 2. I think just with how good he is, I mean, because deep down he's so talented.
Yes.
And how well he plays the Open in Augusta, I'll take my gamble that he gets at least 1.
So you're out.
More.
You're not signing for it.
No, but I'm in if it's the PGA, because if it's the PGA, he doesn't have to win again. If he
Yeah.
gets the PGA, he passes Rory all time, and I'll stand by that. If he's got the same amount of majors with the career Grand Slam, he
Yeah.
Well, of
passes Rory all
course.
time.
Yeah.
Andy, I got a question. I got a response question for you.
Okay.
Who wins more majors at their current numbers where they are, Spieth or Rahm?
So just going forward,
Well, no, Spieth's at 3, Rahm's still
Spieth
at
at
2.
3, Rom's at 2. I think they finished with the same. I think they
Okay.
both
I would
finished
agree
with
with that.
4. I think
I would agree with
Rom
that.
gets 2 more and Spieth gets 1 more.
Hey, so at least you think Spieth wins another one. That's
I do.
nice.
I do. And I did this with Kyle Porter. Me and Porter recorded a
Kyle
major
thinks he wins
over-under-
5 more.
an over-under podcast. No, Kyle was measured. Kyle was at 4 with me. You guys should check it out. It's on the feed.
Will do.
Okay, so what are you signing for 10-1?
If it's
Yeah.
major of choice, yes.
I think even without major choice.
God, that's hard.
Because I think he could get hot, but he hasn't got hot in 6 years, 7 years. So
You're
it's like
telling
I'm
me
gonna take the 10, and I'm gonna take.
I'm not taking the 10 if it's not major of choice.
And
If I
I'm,
don't get the Grand Slam, I'm not taking
I'm gonna
it.
enjoy it.
he gets 20 tries at the Masters and the Open from the ages 30 to 40. He gets 20 chances.
It's a 5% major clip.
2 of 20. I think 2 of 20 is very much in the realm
And
of
let's not act like he
possibility.
couldn't. Like,
It's
he
crazy.
probably won't, but he also has 20 tries at
He
the US
can
Open
win
and
at
PGA.
Pinehurst. Like Pinehurst. is
Yeah,
a good
Pinehurst
spot
is
for him.
definitely, I think,
If
Yeah,
everything goes
Pinehurst-
right, correct, Andy?
I think
Pinehurst is a
Pinehurst
good-
is
yeah.
probably his best on the US Open
Pinehurst
rotor
and
right
Pebble
now.
Beach. I would agree. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
Pinehurst
the
and
only thing
Pebble
about Pebble Beach is it's very different for the US
For-
Open than
than
it
it
is.
is.
The rough
Agreed.
is so long. He has to drive the ball so well that
Agreed.
week.
Agreed.
And
Um,
Andy, I'm sure you have a better idea than we do, but how many par 3s at Pinehurst are like over 210?
Oh God.
So every single one is above 190.
Uh,
And
It's over.
and he's not a great long iron player. And,
No,
and-
he's
and-
not.
And they are. I just did a podcast on Pinehurst, so I could tell you nearly exactly. Number 4 is like 240. 9 is 190.
all right, so 9's
15
an 8 iron if the wind's right.
15 is 200 and 17 is 210. So, Pinehurst, you have 2 really tough par 3s coming down the stretch out of your last
Yeah.
4 shots.
Yeah,
Which is interesting.
we're gonna
Okay,
need
so-
some Louis from the woods. I think he's gonna need to get some foul ball luck at Pinehurst.
So now let's just do 2023. Like, what's your official prediction for Jordan in 2023 in terms of, just give me a major performance? Like, does he win a major? And how many times does he win?
I'm gonna say he wins at Colonial, and he's relevant at. I actually think he'll be on, like. I'll say he's relevant at 3 majors, and he's like really relevant at 1.
what's
Okay.
the
And by
one?
relevant, I mean like top. Going into the weekend, it's like he could still, he needs a good moving day, but he could still win.
yeah,
What's the really relevant one?
I'll say Augusta.
Okay.
I think
But
he'll
no
be-
wins.
he'll
Just
be ready. Well, he
relevant.
picks off Colonial. He wins
Okay.
Colonial.
No major wins though.
No major wins.
I
Okay.
basically have the same thing. I have 1 win and relevant in 1, like really relevant. I have him deep contention in 1 major and then 1 win.
Gosh, it's so boring. I think
I
I'm on
mean,
the same page.
Andy,
I
the
thought you guys were
expectations
gonna
just can't be high.
I
They
thought
can't
you guys were going to be way less rational than that.
Well,
I
he
thought- I
no,
thought I
No,
was
see,
gonna
we're
hear-
very down to earth about Spieth. We will tell you, like,
Yeah.
we're not like sure we're biased when it comes to defending him on a all-time level, but right now we will tell you exactly how
If-
it is.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch him, he doesn't look like a guy that's winning a major championship.
not at all.
the only major he could realistically get is the CJ Cup at Craig Ranch. I think that would be his most realistic. I don't even know if he's playing it this year because it's not an
Why not?
AT&T event, but
Right.
He
I
just
think
like he should be like he should win Augusta if he just doesn't make a couple mistakes that he makes every single. I mean, last year 13 in round 1, he just craps away on Saturday. He's laughing about
don't care-
Saturday when it was
I don't care
pouring.
how bad his swings are for the next 10 years. If he plays Augusta smart for
Yeah.
10 straight years, he'll win twice at least.
Yeah, like
He makes
2021,
so
he made a
many
triple
awful
in round
mistakes at
1.
Augusta.
he makes
Going
way,
back to even
yeah.
2016. Not why.
Yeah.
Why are we not going from the drop zone? He wins the Masters if he goes from the drop zone.
Andy, I don't know if you have the stat on it, but I guarantee probably the last 3 years at Augusta, no one's made more birdies than him.
No,
I
I
don't know
think
if
you're
you-
right. I think you're right.
Yeah, he
I
just makes
remember
way too
hearing
many
that
mistakes.
anecdotally. Yeah, I think I'm on the same page as you guys. I think he's going to be super, super relevant at a major and not win, and then he'll get a Heritage, Colonial, Valero, something of that ilk.
Pebble would be cool this year
Maybe
with the elevated
Phoenix
field.
would be really cool.
Well, yeah,
Like,
I'll actually be.
I'd love to see him win Phoenix on Super Bowl.
I have media passes to Phoenix through school, so
Really? How'd you
Yeah.
get that?
well, I work for the radio at ASU, so
Oh, that's all. So are
that's
you gonna
just
be
like-
there?
yeah, I'll be there all week probably. I get to go into the like media room, watch the interviews, stuff like that. So
It's
Pretty
sweet,
sick.
right?
I know,
Done it.
yeah.
I've done it a couple times. The
Yeah.
first time I was ever credentialed was Tiger was Genesis, and the first one I walked into was Tiger's press conference this past year at Genesis in February. And it's like, holy shit, like I could actually raise my hand right now and ask Tiger a
Yeah.
question.
no,
And
it's
I
I'm
was scared-
excited
I was
because
scared shitless. I chickened out,
Yeah.
but it's cool.
Yeah.
It's a really cool
How
experience.
many
really
events?
excited.
How many events have you been to, Andy?
Credentialed or just as a fan?
Just like as in general, yeah, just as a fan.
Oh, I've been going. I try and hit 2 majors a year. I've been going to PGA Tour events for my whole life.
yeah,
And I try and. Last year was really convenient for me because Oak Hill. I'm a junior member at Oak Hill, so that was really easy. And then LACC, I spend most of my year in LA. This year, I'm going to the Masters with my dad, and then I'm going to try and do Pinehurst.
we would love to have you back on after the Masters too. Is this your first time?
Anytime. Yeah, it's my first time going to the Masters.
Oh
I was
yeah, we've
supposed
got to
go-
hear that.
Supposed to go last year. My dad got COVID, so we're going this year.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
will. Anytime you guys need me, I love doing this. Anytime you need me for the
yeah, I'd love to hear
the
your
weird
Augusta
stat
experience.
stuff or anything with majors or whatever you guys want, just let me know.
Recap Spieth's second jacket sounds like a plan.
Before you leave, test it out. We had an interview like 2 years ago. One of our first episodes. He said he put some of the Augusta grass in a water bottle, and the entire water bottle was green by the next day.
Really
Yeah,
interesting.
they're
I'll be
painted
sure to,
completely.
I'll be sure to check that out. Yeah, I'll be
Yeah.
sure to give it a shot.
All right. Well, thank you, Andy. We appreciate you coming on. This is definitely a fantastic, interesting topic to discuss. It's been a good one. It's been a long one. We've gone over an hour now, but no, we love it. Thank you so much for coming on, and hopefully we can talk to you again after the Masters.
Awesome. Cheers, guys. Thanks so
Perfect.
much.
Take care.
Peace.
Take care.